Happy Monday! Welcome to Screen Junkies Universe, where we have a full house of brilliant minds in order to dive into the topic of our lifetime, people. That's right. Oh, no. It's The Last Jedi.
Oh, boy.
Nothing could be more important than this. Nothing. Dan Murrell.
Hi.
Welcome. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Hal Rudnick.
It's ya boy. Sorry, I just like saying that.
No Millie, but we still are happy to see you mostly.
I left my dog at home.
Yeah, we're mostly still glad you're here. Thank you. Spencer Gilbert.
Bop. That's my catchphase. I came up with it. Bop. It's never been sung before.
Joe Starr.
To quote the Porgs in The Last Jedi, good morning.
And don't kill me.
Spoiler.
Guys, not yet.
Oh.
This is a full, as it says in the title, this is a full-on 100% light speed spoiler talk. So if you think So if you have not seen The Last Jedi, check out now. Go watch it. 2 or 3 days later, come back after you have time to digest it all. And we're going to talk about it here because it is seemingly a very divisive movie.
It's the most divisive Star Wars movie since Rogue One, Roth.
Yeah, since the last one.
Topped only by The Force Awakens before it.
Hot take.
Yeah, hot takes. It is one of those things where I think that I'm like, how much of this is just really Twitter and a very vocal minority making it seem as if this film is really splitting our country, and how much of this is real? I have to wonder. So let's look at the data, shall we?
Let's look at some numbers.
Let's look at the numbers.
Like, I saw someone that tweeted, Ryan Johnson tore down everything J.J. Abrams put up. I'm like, what?
Over one movie. They've made the same
fair.
amount of Star Wars movies.
That's kind of true, but...
Was it you that tweeted that?
No, it wasn't me that did it, but that's the debate that's happening. It's kind of centered around that.
Yeah.
It's the destruction and seeming destruction, or at least tearing down or subversion of the establishment that this movie did. I think that is causing people to be so divisive, because this is a movie that proudly does that. It's just like, we are going to kind of take what you expect and go the other way with it. And I think that's why we're seeing such passionate response. I think I'm with you, Roth. I think it is probably a minority of people that are seeing this, but they are a very vocal minority, and I think that a lot of them are the hardest of the hardcore fans of this franchise, but some of them the other way. I have this weird thing called mixed feelings.
I don't understand this thing.
Yeah, I know. It's very strange. It's an anomaly.
I don't think this is a perfect movie, but I'm just really glad that Twitter and Reddit and stuff didn't exist when Empire Strikes Back came out.
Right. Because that was a film that was also divided, right?
Yeah, it was so divisive when it came out. People were so upset. Oh my God, like they threw away Han Solo. What's the land? I'm sure whatever the equivalent of social justice warrior was thrown at Lando.
Sure.
And it was just
Affirmative action.
It really kicked you in the teeth, and everyone failed and no one accomplished anything over and over again in that movie. And I think people's hot takes would have been remarkably similar online.
You know what? I wish Twitter and Instagram existed when Jedi came out, because can you imagine those Ewok memes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ewok
would have been dank.
memes would have been awful.
Well, that movie should have been torn to shreds.
But then, isn't that sort of interesting, though? Because a lot of people are saying, oh, Ryan Johnson really, really did his own thing here, which I actually agree. He did.
Very much.
However, given the similar response to the middle movie, did he? Joe?
Did he do his own thing? Yeah.
Yes and no, though, kind of, right?
I mean, look, we sit at this table almost like every day and go, stop giving us the same shit, Marvel. Like, just give us something. And that's what he gave us. And that was my big takeaway from this movie, was I was like, oh, he went in these directions. And I really appreciate it.
Although given what we're saying right here, isn't that a little bit similar to Jedi?
It's the Empire Strikes Back of Star Wars.
Yeah, so that's all I'm saying.
Well, but I disagree somewhat, because I think a lot of where you're seeing this divide is, and I rewatched Force Awakens last night, actually, because I wanted to come into this week. Somehow I knew we'd be talking about this. I don't know. I just had a hunch. But I wanted to come into this week kind of having refreshed myself on that movie. And, when talking about this one, because I'm like, are there assumptions that I made about The Force Awakens in my head that aren't necessarily true? The raised parents thing is something that I I understand the outrage, but I also see the point that Rian Johnson's trying to make about, like, you don't have to be born into this. It can be anybody. Like, I get and appreciate that. The Snoke thing is the thing that it's another thing. It's like, I'm not saying that I necessarily am not on board with. The important thing to remember is there's a whole other movie coming out that could recontextualize any of this. But the Snoke thing is the one that I understand the most, because even rewatching Force Awakens, they make him out to be this mythic, huge figure,
Yes.
and there is things. Snoke got to him, like he's like there's this whole thing about Kylo Ren and what happened with Snoke and
The Knights of Ren.
and the end of his last line is like, it's now time to complete his training, and it's like that movie does build him up to be a very important mythic character, and then for this movie to kind of come along and say, like, he's not that important.
Yeah.
And get rid of him. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad choice, but I totally get why it's The Force Awakens is the one that established these, even Rey's parents. That movie treated it so mysteriously. That movie's the one that kind of indicated these are important questions. And then for the next movie, it's exactly like Lost.
And we're conditioned.
It's exactly like Lost. Yes, you're conditioned to when a movie gives you questions to want the answers.
Yeah, and we're conditioned by Star Wars itself. I mean, we got Darth Vader, and then we learned that Darth Vader is Luke's father. It's all intertwined. It's all very important. We're not used to something being, disposable, a disposable detail.
I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but
Yeah.
it's like, I see why there are so many people upset, because you're in a franchise and a genre that tells you that the answers to these questions are important, and then the movie comes out and they're like, they're not that important.
I guess
get it,
the reason I probably liked it more is that those were my least favorite questions coming out of Force Awakens. I didn't care who Snoke was or who Rey's parents were. Those just aren't interesting questions, and I didn't dive into the backlog of YouTube content speculating and stuff like that. This film had questions that were a little bit broader and a little bit more interesting to me. It raised questions like what makes a good leader, questions like what does your family have to do with who you are and your destiny and stuff like that. It had a stronger theme in a way that other Star Wars movies, or the last one, was just asking plot questions, and this was asking more general
Thematic questions.
That so when they got rid of when Snoke first showed up on screen in Force Awakens, I went, uh-oh.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not into this guy. This just seems like the big emperor. Okay, he's small, but still character-wise, he's just he's the emperor.
So Rian Johnson in a Q&A actually addressed the Snoke question. Having said that, to your point, they set up Luke's father as having this great significance, right, throughout the original film. And then if in the next film it was just he was just some guy, that may have felt emotionally unsatisfying to the audience. We're going to swing back to that. I'm not saying that's where I stand on that, because I stand in a very divided place on this internally, which perhaps is right in line with the movie, but this is what Rian Johnson said about Snoke. It would have stopped any of these scenes dead cold if he had stopped and given a 30-second speech about how he's Darth Plagueis. It doesn't matter to Rey. If he had done that, Rey would have blinked and said, who? Which, by the way, would have been hilarious. And the scene would have gone on. And I'm not saying he's Darth Plagueis, by the way. By the end of the film, Kylo Ren's gone from being a wannabe Vader to someone who is standing in his own feet as a complex villain taking the reins. But then the question is, what place would Snoke have at the end of that? That made me realize the most interesting thing would be to eliminate that dynamic between the Emperor and the pupil, so that the bets are off coming into the next film. I have to agree.
That's what I liked the most, was something that confuses me about people going, "What'd you do?" is so many people, and probably a lot of those same people, walked out of The Force Awakens going, it's just a bunch of stuff from the old trilogy, blah, 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 rehash. And then this movie said, you know what? We're getting rid of the old dude on the throne. That dynamic's done. We're not going to lead up to a Return of the Jedi where everybody, now, Rey, you'll turn, ha! And then Kylo goes, no!
And with Luke, as shocking as that was, they got rid of the dynamic that they've done over and over again of the wise but kind mentor shepherding the young person through. He wasn't Obi-Wan, he wasn't Yoda, he was a different kind of mentor.
And so I'm curious what audiences want then. If Force Awakens was look at all this rehash, and then this movie said formula's out the window, man. Let's
Well,
do
you
something
need new
new.
stuff. You can't have a Death Star in every movie or a plot revolving around the Death Star. And I don't know if I'm jumping the conversation too far ahead, but that last shot, I mean, it basically told me, I don't know what it told you guys, but that we are going to have young Jedis. That's going to be Rian Johnson's trilogy.
I thought that was more of like a thematic thing of like, look, anybody can be a Jedi.
Yeah.
I thought like,
I
I don't think like that specific youngling is going to be.
maybe not that young.
I'm sure we'll
but
get a Star Wars
to
movie
me,
for everything.
To
but-
me, it's like, oh, we did not see The Last Jedi. We saw a whole future full of young Jedis wearing,
Yeah.
they have Jedi insignia rings.
Yeah.
I'm
That was
thinking
the
like,
rebel insignia.
Yeah, that was
The
Rose.
Rebel Alliance.
Rose is
yeah.
Yeah.
But nicely done. Thank you for that. But yeah, to me, it's like, oh, give me the broom, boom, pull it with the Force. Okay, we are going to get like some Matthew Vaughn type young X-Men slash.
No.
Jedi First Class.
I don't know. That's what I'm seeing. That's. I mean, talk to me in a few years. If I'm wrong, I'll own
Well,
up
that's
to
kind
it.
of like what Rebels is doing, but before.
Yeah.
I think
Dan.
when people are. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No,
Dan.
it's for me. It's like, and I said this when we did our spoiler review. So it doesn't matter to Rey. He's right. It doesn't matter to Rey, and obviously, he's kind of saying like, I didn't like this dynamic, and so I got rid of it because it's more interesting, and I understand that. I think maybe where there might have been not a miscalculation, but just a natural blowback is that like he's right. It doesn't matter to Rey. There is a segment of the fandom to whom it did matter. And so I think a lot of that blowback is not necessarily what you did, but how you did it, and the way that I think a lot of people think he very casually discarded certain things. Like it's not so much what was done, but how it was done, and it's that struggle between the fans, the people that want something different, the people that are established, and I think some of it was successfully done, and I think some of it was not so successful. I was actually watching something that didn't strike me, but I wonder, particularly people that are original trilogy fans, is how so far, like Han Solo, one of your three main heroes of the original trilogy, has a very kind of sad end where he and Leia don't make it. And really, I mean, they're kind of connected, but they're separated for most of their lives. And then they have this kid who kills him, and he dies and falls off a bridge alone, really, and just gone. It's a very kind of a sad ending for him, unable to redeem his son. And then you come to this movie and you have Luke Skywalker, the second of the three heroes now. He, after Return of the Jedi, starts a Jedi Academy, fails, gives rise to the greatest villain of the galaxy's ever known, lives most of the end of his life alone, miserable, and in exile. And again, ultimately, even though through self-sacrifice, kind of dies alone and, has this sort of sacrificial thing. And I wonder if part of what people are responding to is this thing of like, your heroes from the original trilogy led really miserable effing lives.
And perhaps
And died
that's
alone,
his point.
and maybe that's the point. But again, I can also see like I wonder if that's some carryover of people that were skeptical about Han Solo, and now Luke again is like, you're taking these people who I rooted for 3 movies, and every one of them is just miserable. They just had a sad, miserable life, and
divorced.
And part of it is like I wonder, it's just like, wait, like I like these people, and you're just like putting all of them through the ringer and then discarding them, and I wonder if that is part of why people are responding like. Again, I'm not passing
Sure, and I
judgment,
understand.
but
I can understand that gut punch because they haven't just rooted for them for 3 movies. They've rooted for them for decades. Like
Right.
everyone has their headcanon, whether it's an EU book where Luke hooks up with Mara Jade and they raise an army of Jedi or whatever. Like everyone has their headcanon for how, this stuff worked. And even, we talked about it last week. Even Mark Hamill was like, I gotta wrap my head around this.
yeah.
But I don't know. I just think it was such a brave, strong choice. I loved Luke's arc of, she lands and she's like, we need a hero, we need a legend, we need Luke Skywalker. And he's like, those things aren't real. Like, go back to the prequels. The Jedi sucked. And then at the end, what they give you is Luke recognizing, okay, they don't need me because I don't think I'm a hero. I don't think I'm a legend. But I can give them a version of that can spark some hope. And then we see the kid, telling the story of, Luke Skywalker with this epic showdown. And, I think that's just a cool, sort of sweet choice.
Yeah.
Spencer. You know.
Oh, I mean, I was gonna bring up something else, but this was a giant FU, not to Star Wars, because it's also a Star Wars movie very much, but it's an FU to just kind of like the underlying things of Star Wars, where like, first of all, that heroes are going to save us in the first place. It's not going to be something we all do together.
Yeah.
But also that those heroes are chosen because they're of a certain bloodline. And that is what Star Wars is built around, is the Solos and the Skywalkers, and they are the people who are going to save the galaxy, and the whole fate of the galaxy rests on these two families' shoulders. So blowing that up is a really brave and an interesting move to do. But it also it's upsetting because you love them so much.
I think the silver lining. I think to Dan's point that I was thinking about, where these heroes that you loved, things did not go great for them. The silver lining to that, to me, was like this idea that, you know, the generation ahead of you like did their best, still didn't quite pull it off, and that's okay. Like, that was a big takeaway for me, was like they didn't stick the landing. It turns out they didn't stick the landing, and that sucks and that's sad, but that's okay, because we're all still in the Millennium Falcon together, and there's a nest full of porgs, and here we go. Like, you keep trying.
Is it a nest?
Yeah, I think
well, that makes sense.
murder
There's
of
porgs,
It's
they
going
nest.
to be interesting to me to see where The Last Jedi feels when you have this completed trilogy of films, because the one thing that I didn't even think about, again, when thinking of them as a set of films, is that final image of The Force Awakens, which I thought was very powerful and evocative. And revisiting the film and knowing that literally the next thing is him taking the lightsaber and just doing that with it, that image loses a lot of its power. In context with the fact that is literally a meaningless gesture that she's making, where he just takes it and throws it away. That image, I think, loses. There was no, JJ was not planning to fold, and I know that George Lucas wasn't planning Star Wars to fold into Empire, but we're in a different times. But it just kind of shows that, like, JJ made a thing, Rian Johnson came in, now he's made his thing, and now JJ's got to come back and make his thing.
Maybe it was seriously symbolic. Maybe it was like, you know what your old expectations are. You know what you attached to this image, and everyone thought that Luke was going to mentor Rey in the same way Yoda did to Luke or something. Screw your expectations. It was very symbolic.
But you can't do that and not expect there to be some people that are not on board with it, because you're literally taking the last image that you left fans with, which is, I think, a very evocative image about the past reaching out to the future, or vice versa, and literally the movie, I mean, we should have known what was happening right then, is literally the movie saying, like, that doesn't matter.
But just, if you play out the alternate reality, the counterfactual, where she hands him the lightsaber and he takes it and he goes, "Your training begins now," and then he has her like he's on her back and she's doing flips around the island.
I'm saying there's a middle ground. I'm saying it was done so casually in this movie that you have to expect that there's going to be people that are going, like, I'm not on board with this, because it's not just that it's being discarded, it's that it's just being thrown away, you know, and that, I think that's where so many people are getting so angry.
I was almost the opposite, because I feel like, in terms of that last image of Force Awakens, because he sees it doesn't take away everything you see Luke go through. Like, because if you go back and watch that scene, like, he looks at the lightsaber and just, like, runs the gamut of emotions. Like, for a 20-second scene with no lines, like, he plays it really, really well. And I almost think it's even stronger for him to see, you know, to be like, oh God, it's back. Someone's finally here. Now I have to do something. To take it and look at it and just be like, no, I'm wiser now. This isn't where I am. And to go, nope, and to just toss it, I think is
and he's
almost
so
makes it stronger.
far removed from being that guy with the lightsaber. I mean, the gesture was kind of like really weird.
It was played as a comic moment, and that's what I think bothered people. It's not that Luke took the lightsaber and said, "This isn't who I am anymore," and discarded it. He literally took it and just went like, eh. And I think that was literally just kind of like thumbing your, you know, like, screw you if you think this is, you know. And I think it's that there was a seeming element, like, not just of we're gonna reset and burn everything down, which I get, but almost it seemed a bit contemptuous at times of fandom and a lot of these people who did have theories. And I get that, like, film Twitter has been largely unbearable about this movie because I think that a lot of film Twitter is contemptuous of fandom, or at least certain fans, or in the way that they just endlessly speculate. And I feel like this movie kind of had the same thing, which is like, I don't care about your theories and I don't care about you, and what you did was a waste of time, and screw you, nerd. And I feel like that's why a lot of people are angry, is like they invest so much of their lives into this franchise, and in a weird way, this movie said, screw you, nerd, it was a waste of time. And I'm not saying it was the right thing, like people do get too wrapped up in these things, but I understand why people are they feel so negative.
There was an
about this
element
movie.
of F your Snoke theories, F your Rey theories. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm just going to propose my take on this and then hear what you guys have to say about that. Thanks. Which is this. You can't win. You cannot win making a Star Wars movie at all. And this is why. Because, in my opinion, and I agree with you, film Twitter has been absolutely unbearable in terms of judging other people's opinions. Every opinion is welcome. Every opinion is welcome. People can have whatever response that they want. However, if you find those original trilogies emotionally resonant, it's probably largely because they are more myth-based. They are more archetypal. Archetypal works too. They hit on core themes that are just true for us as human beings in terms of our life journey and what we perceive that to be. This is a more in my opinion, a more thought-provoking film that raises big questions about things like war profiteering, about things like the fact that there is no good or bad in total, that things are far more shades of gray. This is a more adult human version in which just because you win something at 25, that lasts until you're 60. It just doesn't necessarily. It's far more humanist in every single approach in terms of the casting, how the characters relate to one another, and the overall what happens with Rey's parents, right? Yeah, like they were just a couple of drunkards. However, JJ could come and undo that, by the way. He could come and undo what Ryan did too, and say, oh no, Kylo was lying, actually you're a Solo. This is
and
my
they're
point.
building another battle
And
station.
they're building another battle station. But this is my point. You either do one of two things. You hearken back to what people loved, and in that case, why do it? We already have that thing. And then people accuse you of retreading. Or you update it and run the risk of betraying what came before. In this case, you're right, in that physical embodiment of throwing it over your shoulder, which is an interesting, bold choice. And in that case, why not just make something new? Is this Bond? Is it a relic of the past that the more you try to update it, the more you get yourself in the soup? Because then it's no longer Bond? You know what I mean? Can you just not do Star Wars? That is my question to you. And my final thought, because then I'm going to let you guys go at it, is this. I posted two things that were opposite points of view almost on this film today, written by two women I love. And one was about how this undercut Rey's character, because all she was there to do was activate others. She was not activated. That if you removed her from this narrative, it would continue. Unlike Luke, if you removed him from the narrative of the original trilogy, it stops dead. If you remove Kylo from this, it stops dead. So in that way, you undermine her as the protagonist. I'm not saying that I agree. I think it's an interesting point of view. And another one about the diversity. If we have a Star Wars movie that is allowing for opposite or divergent points of view to all be valid, it belongs in the freaking film registry right now. Because if this thing can remind us that we can have different point of views and all be valid and can discuss and decide to agree to disagree or see your point of view, then it belongs in the film registry right now. Those are the end of my thoughts. Yeah. And now I will sit back and relax as you guys take this show forward.
The good and evil in the original trilogy was very black and white. Yeah. And here there are these, in this film, there are a couple of startling moments where there appears to be a gray area, and it is thought-provoking in that way. It's not as clear-cut. I think we live in a day and age where it's not as clear-cut as well.
But can you just not, in a way, what Star Wars movie wins? What Star Wars movie is the Star Wars movie that everybody wants?
The ones that were made 30 years ago.
Exactly. You can't do it.
You can't do it, but I also think you can do it in a way. Again, I think this movie it's being done. It was the casual way in which it was done, I think, caused offense to some people. Was it? And I get it. That's Rian Johnson putting his stamp on it. And I just think I'm going to break it down to Disney speak, which is business. What you have to be careful of is that the ones I think that you offended the most with this movie I'm not saying they were right or wrong to be offended, but there are a lot of people that it offended, are not the ones that like it the most are the critics who didn't pay to see it at all or will pay to see it maybe one more time. I think a lot of the people that were troubled the most by this movie are the ones that would have paid to see this movie 7, 8, 9, 10 times.
They probably still will. It made 450 million.
I'm just saying, like, the ones that are the most pissed off are the hardcore Star Wars fans, and I'm not saying you have to cater to them, but I think that there was a bit of a casual attitude towards them in this movie. In tearing everything down, you're also kind of discarding a lot of what they're doing, and a lot of people gloat and will dance and say, like, well, that's what they get for being such big fans. That's not what I think. I think that you should respect all levels, and I'm not saying that you can never take risks, but I just think there's a bit too much casualness shown.
Well, you're boxed in because for me, I would describe myself as not a casual Star Wars fan, but someone who likes it but doesn't make theory videos about it. If you kept doing the same thing, you would lose me. You would lose people who are like, well, I've seen Star Wars 9 times in the last 9 years. Yep. It's getting boring. This for me was like a brush fire where it's like, all right, where do we go from here?
I'm not saying you have to do the same thing. I'm just saying you need to do it in a way that I think doesn't just throw people off the ship in the spirit of doing something.
But Dan, I was off. I was Sandra Bullock in Gravity. They just threw
you back.
They threw me a cable.
They landed you back to the
Yeah, I
radish.
mean, I even I left Rogue One saying like, okay, I would love a non-Death Star related plot, and I feel like there were similar conversations happening when the J.J. Abrams Star Trek came out, because a lot of people were saying like, oh, he made a generic space action adventure movie and not a Star Trek movie. I mean, I feel like but it's a valid conversation right now, but it's not the first time I feel like we've been in this territory.
No, it's every Star Wars, it's every movie now.
Yeah,
Roth, I'm curious because we're sort of talking about the vocal minority and people getting really loud about this, and how much will this actually hurt the box office? You had some numbers.
We have numbers.
I'd be curious to hear 'em.
So the question then becomes: is this actually more the Iron Man 3 of Star Wars, where it's like the hardcore fan base does not care for it, but the other numbers say otherwise? So on Rotten Tomatoes, it has 93% from the critics and 56% of an audience score. However, that's the only site where this is the case. It's got a cinema score of an A. ComScore, Screen Engines has 89% overall positive score. So there are some people that are theorizing that perhaps people are going onto Rotten Tomatoes pointedly to bring down that score.
It takes it takes 15 minutes of Reddit planning for someone to go, let's go! And everybody logs into Rotten Tomatoes.
So it becomes perhaps a false narrative in the sense that are people really is the casual moviegoer as divided about this film as we think, or is this located to the hardcore? It's made $450 million this weekend. Not too shabby. It's making a lot of money. And so is this really located to the hardcore fan base? And if so, is that still valid? I think it is.
It's 100% located to the hardcore fan base, and it is 100% still valid because, again, it's the hardcore fan base that is doing this. You don't that Rotten Tomatoes audience score is absolutely being tanked because people are taking the time to go on there and give it such low ratings because they're angry at this film. That's a symptom. And again, I'm not saying you have to cater to the hardcore fan base, but Force Awakens I looked has like an 80-something%. So there's obviously a disconnect with this particular movie that wasn't there with the last one.
But all Force Awakens did was cater to them, and they didn't like that either.
But
so I don't know what the
I think the answer is that was necessary on the part of Force Awakens because everyone was like, okay, let's not go to the prequel zone again, and Force Awakens had to do that fan service. Otherwise,
but they didn't like that either. They were just like, it's just a gosh darn rehash.
No, the people that didn't like The Force Awakens were the film Twitter people that are on there now saying like, screw Star Wars, screw the conventions, we like that it's new. And they were the ones saying like, I hated The Force Awakens, it was nothing but fan service. But in the hardcore fan base, I think a lot of them were the ones that were saying like, I loved it, I thought it was great. It's two extremes. It's everything nowadays. It's just extremist, and I think that there was maybe a reaction in this movie due to the reaction from the last movie about how it did was cater to the fan base. This movie was maybe too casual, saying like, okay, great, people didn't like that they catered to the fan base, we're going to burn everything down in a way that's going to tweak them, and it makes fun of the fact that. But I think it's You're right. It's a no-win scenario. It is, but I think
can't
that
really make it
both of these movies, I think Force Awakens leaned way too far towards nodding to fans and being a callback, and I think this movie actually leaned too far in being dismissive. And
I guess I just didn't see that mean-spiritedness that you guys saw in terms of, you know,
This
changing.
weekend,
I just didn't.
on film
Well, no,
Twitter?
not from fan. I mean, the movie.
Yeah,
like
it-
I didn't see that in the lightsaber toss.
Oh, I did. I love a lot about this movie. To be clear,
Yeah,
like
I feel
love.
like it's telling that the conversation is even, will Last Jedi be the Iron Man 3 of Star Wars? Because people's sticking point with Iron Man 3 is that they just weren't handed the Mandarin. They just weren't given the thing that they wanted.
Well, they undercut the Mandarin. They built him up, and then they're like, haha,
Yes.
he's actually a Jedi.
Yeah.
And by the way, Iron Man 3 would be one of my favorite Marvel movies if it had continued to follow that and stick the landing and hadn't just done a giant armor suit battle at the end.
Right.
Because I really liked that twist. I don't think they built up Snoke nearly as much as they built up Mandarin or Rey's identity, really. Rey had her vision in The Force Awakens. She touched Luke's lightsaber, so she saw a bunch of Luke Force stuff, and then she saw a vision of her parents leaving.
I've got a hot take. The reason people made so many YouTube videos about it and were so concerned with these questions of who is Snoke and who are Rey's parents is because The Force Awakens didn't do a very good job at either of those things. So people are like, uh-oh, to save these kind of maybe shallow characters, we need to provide, the fans need to come together and provide a good backstory. And Rian Johnson's like,
So confession, I made a "This is who Snoke is" video the next day after I saw The Force Awakens,
Oh, yeah,
and
we made a ton.
I
It was our job.
don't care at all that it wasn't true because it was a fun little bit of pontificating for me, and thematically, it's actually very in line with what Ryan did do in terms of it was more about Gray Force. However, I will say what I find problematic, and again, I sit in the middle. Like I have some issues. I really love so much of this movie, and I just freaking love that it exists, that we can have these conversations. But are we at all concerned that they clearly weren't on the same page? That there's no plan for Lucasfilm and JJ and Ryan that
yes,
they're following?
yeah. I
Like,
can't believe that the
extremely
baton's going to be handed back
because
to
it's going to
JJ.
go back to JJ, who frankly is an opposite filmmaker to Ryan. And I know we've talked about this before. Ryan is subverting it. Every single moment in that movie is about subversion. Every single moment for JJ is about leaning all the way into that trope.
Yeah.
He could just go in and completely undo what Ryan did.
But I don't think he will. I think now we're in an interesting spot because original trilogy didn't have a plan either. It really didn't, because Leia made out with her brother hardcore in Empire Strikes Back.
It wasn't that hardcore.
There was tongue.
I mean, there was tongue. There was
tongue?
there was Lannister tongue.
I don't remember tongue.
And here's why this interests me now.
It felt more like-
I'm so glad that there's not a plan in place, because I don't think J.J. Abrams is gonna go no and like hit a hard reset button. This is two like artists that are really good at what they do, and I'm interested now in the idea that JJ's like took his Lego set and built a thing and then gave it to Rian Johnson, and Rian Johnson went, what if we do this? And then handed to me as
But
JJ
it's a
Abrams,
story,
I go,
but this is a story. You're telling a story.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work if chapter 1 is a story and chapter 2 is a retelling of chapter 1. So that by the end of chapter 2, you're essentially at the end of where you should have been at the end of chapter 1. It's just that the author of chapter 2 didn't like chapter 1 and so rewrote parts of it. And now at the end of chapter 2, when you should be going into chapter 3, you're kind of halfway between chapter 1 and 2. I think that's a big idea. I think it's a big problem, and it did show to me the fact that these were two completely disconnected films, and there was no plan for Star Wars.
The way you're describing it, it's like someone took a page, didn't like that page, edited it, and then uploaded it, and it's like that fast. I can't imagine. I would say all the powers that be, there's a grand plan in
There's
place.
not. They've explained. Rian Johnson has said, I had the license to do with whatever I wanted. Disney just said we're going to make 3 Star Wars movies.
I can't
there's
imagine
You know
there
who
isn't
had a plan
little
was
bit.
Colin Trevorrow, but that has been thrown into a garbage fire.
We don't really know. I mean,
JJ was
I don't
pitching
know.
Star Wars the story this week, they said.
Yeah.
He was pitching the story to Star Wars 9 this week. pitching the story this week. That means it wasn't written when they made this
Yeah.
movie. That bothers me a little bit because this is a trilogy. You're supposed to be telling a story, not 3 loosely connected
Disconnected.
movies that have nothing in common with style or plot or anything, where you're just completely subverting everything that happened in the last one. You've got to have some sense of
I just think we
continuity
watched
there.
a different movie than this weekend if you don't think it was connected to the first one in any way. It just went this way when you wanted it to go that way.
No, it was connected to the first one in completely undoing and saying everything that was set up in the first one didn't matter. That's how it was connected to the first one.
disagree.
That's the direction that it took.
Yeah, it's not that it didn't matter. They just didn't win. Sure, the plot wise they're where they are the same way, but character wise, they've all gone through so much as fully fleshed out characters who have new dimensions and have learned things.
What is different about Rey at the end of this movie? Wasn't different.
She's
about
been
her.
looking for a mentor, looking for someone to help her through this, and she's realized she's gonna, or her
gotta do it
parents,
herself.
and find someone else to tell her place, and she's gonna have to figure out her place on herself.
That's her major arc, which I like. The first movie starts with the First Order being this fringe group that's about to make their big push and steal an American election, and then in this movie they just get the First Order is the rise of the alt-right. That's what it was to me.
That's a hot take.
Dude, no. It's the original trilogy is goddamn space Nazis, you guys. The First Order is a fringe group that has held on to their weird space Nazi.
And Snoke is the Russians.
Snoke is the Russians.
Who's Kylo Ren?
Yeah.
Kylo Ren is Milo. There's still redemption for you, Milo.
Kylo's so in his feelings, man. Oh, Kylo.
But that's what the first.
Were you feeling the sexual tension between them two?
Between Kylo and Hux
And
or
Rey.
Kylo and Rey?
Everybody.
I was feeling
Yeah.
it between
Yeah.
Kylo and
It was a
Snoke.
little- yeah.
This was actually totally
There
different.
was JT says I am with Dan on this one. I'm sure.
Thank you, JT.
All right, I'm getting the rap from Mr. Billy Business, so we could
right.
talk about this all day.
Yeah.
We will be talking about this so much
We'll
more.
be doing it tomorrow
Do you know
again.
what? Honestly,
And the next 2 years till
what
the
I
next
love about
movie
this
comes out.
movie is I truly understand all of these positions, and think that this will be a movie that we talk about for a really long time. It's why I love Rian Johnson as a filmmaker. I came into this with number one excited because I am a fan of his, and he kind of gave me the exact Rian Johnson movie that I should have been expecting if I was including his previous work in my expectations. So I think it's kind of great that we're able to have this conversation. What do you guys think? Agree, disagree? We can do it calmly. We can do it impassioned. We can also agree that everybody's got a valid opinion if you want, or you can just tell us to fuck off.
They're just movies, people.
The Jumanji, they're just movies. They're just movies.
Can it not be every movie, please, from here on out? Can we just calmly or rationally discuss every movie? It's like this is every movie now.
I know.
This is every single.
Is that not what this movie is also pointing out a little bit? And even the discussion around this movie is pointing out a little bit how binary everything is, and that life just is not binary. It's just not. It's more complicated.
I'll tell you what, this conversation, I've only seen, truth be told, I've only seen The Last Jedi once, and now this made me want to see it that much more again, just
I've
so I
only
can.
seen it once as well.
Yeah.
I was on
To the theater.
Yeah.
Marketing move.
I'm like I was looking at Ken Knapsack's Twitter, and he's like seeing it for a fifth time. I'm like, damn,
Knapsack.
Yeah.
I was on Couch this
5 times.
weekend. I was one with Couch. Couch was one with me. The Jumanji Honest trailer is coming out tomorrow. You guys got to check that out.
yes.
I'm very excited to see that. We are also going to have a new series right here on News called Make It or Break It, starting later this week. I think on Thursday, if I have my facts straight. Really?
That sounds about
Billy
right.
has nodded.
Billy nods.
Billy nods. We're going to start that on Thursday. It's very exciting. We'll have a little tease for that for you tomorrow, I think. But you know what you have to check out right now that is available on Screen Junkies Main is these guys put together a Star Wars video that we can all agree upon because it is hilarious and it is smart and it's super fun. There's some amazing whispering. I'm sorry.
Some amazing whisper writing by
Amazing
these two
whisper
men.
writing.
Luke Apollo on that
We
side
should
of the table.
we should do one for Last Jedi because while I really like the movie, there's some really dumb parts and I have a lot of questions.
That's right. You should do one for this as well. I want to hear some whispering from Joe every time he's on the show from now on. Little disappointed that wasn't there today. Serious Star Wars questions. Go watch it right now. Thank you for joining us today. Please be nice to each other. And us. We're human.